You ever seen someone dig their own hole and then jump in without even realizing it? Yeah, that's exactly what happened when a neighborhood Karen decided my wife looked suspicious for simply standing on our own porch. She didn't knock. She didn't ask questions. She just picked up her phone and called the cops. What she didn't know is that my wife is the cops. Not just any cop, either she's the new chief of police. And what came next? Let's just say it was one of the most satisfying moments I've ever witnessed. Between Karen's face when the officers showed up and the twist that unfolded after. This turned into something the entire neighborhood would remember. So if you've ever dealt with nosy neighbors, entitled rule makers, or someone who thinks calling the police is a power move, buckle up, because this story is going to make your day. And hey, if you like this story, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we've got a special story lined up for you. You're not going to want to miss it. Now let me tell you exactly how it all went down. Let me know if you'd like a slightly more dramatic or comedic version too. It started like any other quiet morning. The sun had just started climbing over the rooftops, casting a soft golden light on the neighborhood. My wife was out on the porch, in her usual calm, routine black coffee in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through her emails before work. She wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary, just standing there in her uniform slacks and a plain jacket over her department tee. No lights, no sirens, no attitude. Just her, breathing in the morning. Air before the day got crazy. But apparently, standing still and minding your own business was a criminal offense in Karen's world. I was inside fixing breakfast when I saw Karen out of the corner of my eye through the window. She was across the street with her little clipboard, and that stiff posture like she was patrolling a military base. I didn't think much of it. Karen watched everyone like a hawk. But then she paused, eyes locked onto my wife and pulled out her phone at first. I thought maybe she was texting one of her gossip circle buddies, but then I saw the way she paced, the way her lips moved. She wasn't texting. She was reporting something, and it didn't take long to figure out what tore who. My wife came back inside for a moment to grab her keys, completely unaware that Karen had just dialed 911, and described her as a suspicious figure loitering around a house we owned that we moved into 6 months ago, that Karen had watched us unload moving boxes into. Within 10 minutes, I saw the first patrol car roll up. 2 officers stepped out, calm but clearly trying to figure out why they were here. Karen rushed to greet them like she was the one hosting a crime scene investigation. She pointed toward our porch, practically yelling as she flailed her arms. I couldn't hear the words, but I could tell by the way she kept jabbing her finger. Toward the door, it was about my wife. Now, I knew what Karen didn't. I knew who those officers were, and I knew exactly what was about to happen the moment they saw my wife. I grabbed my coffee and leaned against the doorframe, waiting for the show to start. Because Karen had no idea that the suspicious woman she called the cops on is the brand new chief of police. The moment the squad car turned the corner and rolled to a slow stop in front of our house, Karen lit up like she was the hero in some small-town drama. She marched over to the sidewalk, arms waving, already mid-sentence before the officers even stepped out. I watched through the front window, my coffee now cold in my hand, as Karen pointed toward our porch like she'd just spotted Bigfoot. My wife hadn't even noticed the patrol car yet. She was still standing there, checking her phone, sipping the last bit of coffee. Calm, unaware, and completely unbothered. The 2 officers got out of the car with that casual, slightly amused look that seasoned cops wear when they know something doesn't smell right. Karen met them halfway with her usual flurry of exaggerated hand gestures. You could tell she thought she was doing her civic duty. Probably expected a medal or at least some HOA. Praise for protecting the neighborhood from the terrifying woman with a coffee mug. My wife finally turned to see what the fuss was about. She narrowed her eyes, spotted the patrol car, and recognized the officers immediately. I saw the way her whole posture shifted, not in fear, not in surprise, but like she'd just spotted a couple of coworkers at the grocery store. She stepped down from the porch slowly, casually, like she had all the time in the world. And the moment those two officers laid eyes on her, I saw it the flicker of recognition, followed by barely contained grins. Karen kept talking clearly, still under the impression that she was in control of the situation. She hadn't noticed the way the officers had suddenly gone quiet, their eyes now fixed on the woman she just accused of being a threat. My wife reached them before Karen even had the chance to wrap up whatever nonsense she was spewing. She greeted the officers by name, first name. Man gave them a nod like she was clocking in. Karen froze. The silence hit fast. One officer scratched the back of his head awkwardly while the other glanced at Karen, then back at my wife. You could see the gears turning in Karen's head as she tried to understand why these two men who were supposed to handle the threat were now standing at attention like soldiers who just met their commanding officer. My wife smiled politely and reached into her jacket pocket, and that's when everything changed. The second my wife pulled out her badge, the mood shifted like someone had flipped a switch. There wasn't a dramatic pause or a slow-motion gasp, just a real-time unraveling of Karen's entire fantasy. My wife held it up with the kind of smoothness that comes from years of wearing it, not flashing it to show off. Just holding it there, calm and steady, like it belonged and it did. The gold gleam of that chief's badge caught the morning light and, importantly, caught the attention of the two officers who now looked like they were trying their hardest not to crack up. Karen blinked, then blinked again, as if the badge might vanish if she stared long enough. Her mouth hung slightly open, and for the first time since we moved in, she had absolutely nothing to say. The officer closest to her cleared his throat, then nodded respectfully to my wife. "Good morning, Chief," he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. The other officer smirked, folding his arms. "Didn't expect to see you out here this early," he added casually, like they were just catching up at a team briefing. Karen's head whipped between the two of them, trying to piece together what she was hearing, like someone realizing the plot twist came 5 chapters ago and she completely missed it. My wife stayed composed, not gloating, not smug as professional. "Got a report of suspicious activity," she said. Glancing down at the clipboard Karen had dropped slightly in her hand. "Guess that was me." Her tone wasn't sarcastic, but there was a weight to it. A kind of quiet authority that made everyone else in the scene look like background noise. Karen took a step back, suddenly looking very small on that perfectly trimmed lawn she used to rule. I didn't know," she stammered, trying to laugh it off. "You were just standing there and I didn't recognize you." One of the officers gave her a look that said everything without saying a word. "Well," he replied, keeping it neutral, "now you do." The silence that followed was so thick you could hear the wind rustling through the hedges. Karen shifted her weight from one foot to the other, clutching her clipboard like it might save her from drowning. But it was too late. The moment she called the cops on the chief of police for sipping coffee on her own porch, whatever credibility she had left evaporated. My wife simply nodded, thanked the officers for responding, and turned to head back inside, leaving Karen standing there like a glitch in the system, and me. I was still by the door, watching it all unfold with a front row seat and a smile I didn't bother hiding. Karen didn't know whether to apologize or pretend the whole thing never happened. She stood frozen on the lawn, gripping that clipboard like it was the last shred of authority she had left. The officers, now fully relaxed, spoke to her with the same tone you'd use with someone who'd just embarrassed themselves at a dinner party plight, but with a smile that said you really messed up. One of them calmly explained there had been no threat, no suspicious activity, no reason to call 911, just a homeowner drinking coffee on her own porch. Karen tried to laugh. That nervous kind of laugh people do when they're completely cornered. "I didn't mean any harm," she mumbled. "I just didn't recognize her and thought maybe something was wrong." But her voice cracked halfway through, and her eyes wouldn't meet my wife's. My wife didn't respond right away. She didn't need to. The badge had already said enough. She just gave Karen a quiet nod, the kind of look that wasn't angry or smug, just final. Then she thanked the officers again and stepped back inside the house. Karen stood there a few seconds longer, like she was waiting for someone to tell her it was all a prank. But it wasn't. Karen didn't show her face for a few days after that. Her usual morning patrols, the ones where she marched around with her clipboard like she ran the place, came to a sudden stop. It was almost funny how quiet the neighborhood felt without her lurking at every corner. But the silence didn't last long, because word spread fast. By the end of the week, everyone knew. The whispers at the mailbox, the nods from neighbors who'd once avoided us. It all changed. People who had barely looked our way before started waving, smiling, even stopping to chat. One neighbor dropped off cookies with a note that just said, "Thanks for keeping the neighborhood safe." Karen, on the other hand, walked with her head down. No more lectures about lawn length or trash bins being out a minute too long. If she saw my wife coming, she'd turn and walk the other way. No apology ever came, but honestly, none was needed. My wife didn't gloat. She didn't hold it over anyone. She just kept doing her job the same way she always had. Only now. The entire neighborhood knew exactly who they were dealing with. And so did Karen.